What is going on, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and welcome back to a very special episode of Let's Ride. It's the other Winners and Losers podcast. Listen, if the Steelers don't play typically on a Sunday, which if they play on a Sunday, the Winners and Losers segment is on my Monday Let's Ride podcast, then I typically do this as a special show. So even if they play on Monday night, typically on Tuesday morning, I have a very special Let's Ride Winners and Losers podcast, typically a little bit shorter. Nonetheless, we have a lot to discuss after the Steelers lose second week in a row, preseason week 2, 9-3. That's right. They lose 9-3. And if you didn't watch this game, well, you're one of the lucky ones. You're one of the lucky ones that didn't have to sit through. It was a bad game. It was a boring game. And you might wonder, like, okay, what is the winner and losers numbers? Like, what are we talking about here? Winners, 6. Losers, 5. You're probably thinking, Jeff, how in the hell do you have more winners than losers? Well, keep in mind that when the final score is 9-3, no, the offense didn't do their job, but the defense certainly did. So you're going to see that a lot of the winners are on the defensive side of the ball. A lot of the losers are on the other side of the ball. So enough talking. Let's get to it. Winners and losers. Let's start with the winners. First winner is Nick Herbig. That's right, Nick Herbig. He finishes in very limited time, probably played about a quarter, maybe a little bit more. 6 tackles, 3 solo, 1.5 sacks, a tackle for loss, and 2 quarterback hits. He did a tremendous job. Nick Herbig, he just kind of has that flair for the dramatic. He's one of those guys that he might not play a ton because when you're behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, you know that opportunities are going to be limited. Nonetheless, when he gets an opportunity, he proved this last year as a rookie, and he's already showing it in year 2 in the preseason that the moment the stage is not too big for him, that the lights are not too bright. I think Nick Herbig is a star in the making. He is going to be a really good third pass rusher. The way that they went about getting him freed up, getting pressures. I love the inside stunt, which is how he got the sack of Mitch Trubisky. Really good stuff. Nick Herbig deserves to be on the winners list. Tremendous stuff. Let's go to another second-year player for another winner, and that's Keanu Benton. You got to remember, Keanu Benton last week left the game after being poked in the eye, did not return. We haven't seen a lot of him outside of training camp. He's back. He's healthy. 2 tackles, a half a sack, 2 quarterback hits. Keanu Benton looks the part. Keanu Benton looks like he is ready to take that next step in his career. And that next step could be really impressive along the defensive line. So Keanu Benton, he can play nose tackle. He can play defensive end. They can move him all around. When you think about him, Larry Ogunjobi, Cam Hayward, you throw into Marvin Leal. We'll get to him in a second. Keanu Benton looks the part. Sophomore jump. That's what I'm thinking. Let's go to the next winner. Cameron Johnston. Cameron Johnston. Now, this is the new punter in case you're not familiar with the name yet. He had 5 punts, a 56.8 yard average. Incredible average. And he had 2 punts inside the 20. Some people might say, well, it's a punter is a winner. First, you're not noticing how bad the punting has been in Pittsburgh for probably the last 6 or 7 years. And on top of that, you're also not noticing how good punting and how it can impact the game. Cameron Johnston's leg. Now, could he probably work on his directional kicks a little bit to help the kickoff team or the punt team, I should say? Yeah, he probably could. But ultimately, Cameron Johnston's doing a phenomenal job of trying to do whatever he can as a punter to flip the field. So even in the first half of the Steelers versus Bills game, where the offense was struggling, Cameron Johnston was the one that was bailing them out, getting the punts that were flipping the field, pinning the Bills back, helps the defense out a lot. It's good to see that the Pittsburgh Steelers look to finally have a punter in Cameron Johnston. All right, let's go to the next winner, Patrick Queen. Now, you might say, okay, Jeff, his stat line is simple. It's 2 tackles. They were both solo tackles. What's the big deal here? What's the big deal for me? This is our first time seeing Patrick Queen in a black and gold uniform. Patrick Queen has, free agent acquisition. We saw him a lot with the Baltimore Ravens. Didn't play last week. Saw him on the field. I loved seeing him and Landon Roberts together. But then when Landon Roberts left the field, you saw Peyton Wilson come in. Just tremendous, tremendous stuff. I thought Patrick Queen flashed on the screen. You noticed him out there, and he was amped up. I mean, there was one time he had an inside linebacker blitz. He overran, over pursued. That's going to happen. He's excited. He's on the field for the first time at Heinz Field as a member of the Steelers. I'm sorry, I just said Heinz Field. Man, I just said Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium. But you understand what I'm talking about. Patrick Queen, even though he didn't light up the stat sheet, had a really good game, and it was great to see him in the black and gold. 2 tackles, 2 solo. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more from Patrick Queen here in the future. All right, the next 2 winners, maybe some people are like, really? Is this where you're going? But hear me out. The next one's DeMarvin Leal. Now, DeMarvin Leal had 1 tackle, and it was a solo tackle. But to me, what I noticed when watching this game, and I haven't gone back and watched the all 22 or anything like that, but when I go back and watch DeMarvin Leal, and I think back to the game that I watched, I noticed him. So when a defensive lineman, even one that's like flexing out as a pass rusher, which they use Leal in those situations, if you notice them, they're doing something right. And I noticed DeMarvin Leal on a lot of occasions. He is a unique beast. He's big. He seems to have slimmed down a little bit. It seems like the Steelers have kind of found a role for him. And he's impacting plays. That doesn't always mean that you find your way up on the stat sheet. It doesn't mean that you find your way to leading the team in tackles for a specific game or getting sacks. If you move the quarterback off his launch point and make him hold the ball longer and someone else gets a sack, you impacted the play. And so when I see DeMarvin Leal doing a lot of these things, I think back to last season when we called him Mr. Inactive at the end of the year. I think back to last season when it was like, man, DeMarvin Leal, here he goes again. Here we go again. Yeah, DeMarvin Leal. But to me, I think DeMarvin Leal's done a phenomenal job of taking what was a bad situation at the end of last season, really working hard, realizing what's on the line in the next 2 years with him and his rookie contract, and putting his best foot forward. So for DeMarvin Leal, no, 1 tackle and 1 solo tackle, or they're not it. That's not going to be, wow, let's hang our head on that. But DeMarvin Leal is impacting games. Really happy to see him turning his game around. Hopefully that continues, not just into making the team, but being an impact player on the team. Let's go to the next one, Mark Robinson. Mark Robinson is the 6th and final winner on the list. Mark Robinson had 6 tackles, 5 solo, a tackle for loss. Here's what I noticed about Mark Robinson. Yeah, he's making plays against backups, and that's great. He's also, this is more important to me, he is also making special teams tackles. You're thinking, Jeff, what does that have to do with anything? It has a lot to do with making the 53-man roster. Mark Robinson is in a battle with Tyler Matakevich and some of these back-end linebackers. Who are they going to keep? Mark Robinson put his best foot forward on Saturday night. And when Tyler Matakevich left the game with an apparent injury, I'm not sure what the specifics were there, Mark Robinson went out and played a great game. He went out and played a great game, and he proved his worth on special teams, had a huge special teams tackle. It was a big tackle, one of those where the stadium just kind of oohs and ahs over it. He had one of those plays. So Mark Robinson, I think he deserves to be on the winners list, not just because he had 6 tackles, 5 of them solo, 1 tackle for loss, but because he's really starting to come together. He's really starting to figure things out. It's good to see. Good for Mark Robinson. All right. So like I said, it's a shorter podcast, so we're going to take a really quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive into the losers of the Steelers' loss. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right. Now we're back. Let's talk about the losers. We just went over the winners. I'll read those to you quickly in case you forgot. Nick Herbig, Keanu Benton, Cameron Johnston, Patrick Queen, DeMarvin Leal, and Mark Robinson. Now the losers, some of these are groups, and there were 5 of them. Not all groups, but there were 5 losers. The first one is a group, the offensive line. The Steelers' offensive line, whether you're talking about opening up lanes in the running game, whether you're talking about protecting the quarterback, it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough in any way, shape, or form. The Steelers barely rushed for over 106 yards on the ground, and 42 of those yards came from Justin Fields. That's not going to cut it. And on top of that, the Steelers surrendered 4 sacks to their quarterbacks and a lot of pressures, 10 quarterback hits. The offensive line, from the starters or the ones, whatever you want to call them, all the way to the depth pieces at the very end of the 4th quarter, could not get the job done. They didn't get the job done. They didn't do their respective jobs in terms of protecting the quarterback, especially when Russell Wilson was in the game. For a guy that's 35, going to be 36 years old, he's going to need some time. And boy, did that pocket just collapse. It collapsed around him like a wave, and it was bad. It was bad. And I guarantee you that the offensive line is going to have their ears full of coaches this week. I mean, they're going to be in their ears telling them how horrible they did, what they need to work on. I get it. The offensive line played poorly. They're on the losers list for a reason. All right, let's go to the next one. Broderick Jones. I hate to single out one player here. I hate to single out one specific lineman, but Broderick Jones played that bad. He surrendered 3 quarterback hits, at least 2 sacks were his fault. And he was going up against Rousseau. Greg Rousseau, I think is his first name. And he was just getting manhandled. And some people are saying, well, he's got this elbow injury. He's got a brace on it. He's been dealing with it in camp. Okay, I get he might not be 100%. But if that's the product when you're not 100%, then you can't put him on the field. You can't put him on the field. If that's the case, you have to say, Broderick, we need you to heal up. So we're going to sit you down. We're going to let you rest. Get your elbow right, because when the week 1 rolls around, we're going to need you to be 100%. So I'm not buying the he's banged up as a reason why he got steamrolled and bullied at the point of attack by Bills pass rushers. Broderick Jones is a player the Steelers traded up for in 2023. And it was everyone said the same thing. He's inexperienced. He needs time. He needs repetitions. He got a lot of that experience last year. Got a lot of the time and repetitions. I expect to see more. He played better last year. I think he'll regain that form. They just got to figure out what's going on. But Broderick Jones, that's a losing performance right there. All right, so the next loser on the list is going to be controversial to some. And maybe it's unfair on my part and saying this about this player, but I'm going to say it anyways. I have Russell Wilson on the losers list. He finishes with a stat line of 8 of 10, 47 yards, 4.7 average, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 3 sacks for 21 yards, and 86.2 rating. So Russell Wilson was kind of like, it's a very Kenny Pickett-esque performance. A lot of checkdowns, a lot of, not sure what to do in the pocket. Do I tuck it and try and run? Do I try to bail? Do I just take the sack? He didn't get a lot of help. I'll say that right away. But one of the reasons why Russell Wilson, I feel like, is on the loser list is not from my perspective on how he played. It's all based on the fact that with Russell Wilson, it was his first chance to prove himself to the fan base. It was his first chance to say, you know what? I'm going to go out there. Excuse me. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to put my best foot forward. And I'm going to show you why I have pole position, as Mike Tomlin calls it. I'm going to show you why I should be the starter over Justin Fields, who's gotten all the touches with the ones up until he was cleared to come back. That's Russell Wilson. He didn't do that. He left a lot to be desired. He let doubt creep in to not just the fan base, but I'm sure the coaching staff wondering, who are we going to start? He'll get the start in week 3. He'll have an opportunity. But boy, is this thing is way more open than we ever thought it was in terms of the competition. Now, that's just my own personal opinion. This isn't sourced information or anything like that. But still, Russell Wilson, the struggle was real, and that's why he finds himself on the losers list. Next are injuries. Stat line is they're starting to pile up. You had Peyton Wilson being evaluated for a concussion. Jaylen Warren left with a hamstring. I mentioned Tyler Matakevich. He also had some type of undisclosed injury. Nate Herbig, who's supposed to be a potential center, is going to be out for weeks, according to Jerry Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. A shoulder injury, that's problematic, not ideal. Anthony Averett had a hamstring injury. This is the wrong time to start piling up injuries. But Mike Tomlin said that Jaylen Warren's injury is not serious. Beanie Bishop's injury, which kept him out of the game on Saturday, isn't deemed serious. Got some issues with the injuries. So that's on the loser list. The last one, offensive money downs. And we talk about money downs. Money downs are things like 3rd down, 4th down conversions, and then even red zone trips can be considered money down or money situations. Well, the Steelers did not do well in these situations against the Buffalo Bills. They were 0 for 3 on 4th downs, 4 for 12 in 3rd downs, and they didn't have a red zone conversion in the entire game. Because remember, when you convert in the red zone, typically you're scoring touchdowns. So they had 2 trips, 0 touchdowns. So in all those money situations, Steelers didn't cut it. They didn't cut it. And so you want to look at what's the problem. The problem is 4 for 12 third downs. They didn't convert on 4th down, didn't convert in the red zone. And people say, well, if it was a regular season, they would have kicked 2 field goals. Sure, they might have. But you want to see them actually put up touchdowns. You want to see them convert on those weighty downs, as Mike Tomlin calls it. So there's your losers. The offensive line as a whole, Broderick Jones, Russell Wilson, injuries, and those offensive money downs, which were huge failures for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that does it for me, this special Winners and Losers podcast. Hope you all enjoy this. Make sure you join me tomorrow on Monday for a Let's Ride podcast, and I'm going to talk about this game, these players, what does it mean moving forward? We're going to have a lot to discuss, and we'll have it all right here on the Steel Curtain Network. Be sure to check out steelcurtainnetwork.com for a written article on these winners and losers as well. Check it all out, steelcurtainnetwork.com. We appreciate all of our readers, listeners, viewers. Thank you all so much. We'll be back on Monday. We finish these out. Be safe, be kind, and God bless. And as always, go Steelers.